USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Wednesday, November 29th, 2023. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. We were remarking on one of our podcast episodes recently about how interesting it is to see some of the old familiar names rising back to the top.
And joining us now on USCHO Spotlight is the head coach of the North Dakota Fighting Hawks. That's Brad Berry. And Brad, it's so easy to maybe talk about certain players on your team. Jackson Blake, 10 goals in 14 games. Reese Gaver, 7 goals in 14 games. I can go down. Jaden Perron, 7 goals in 14 games. I have to start with the fact that your back end might be one of the least familiar back ends any coach has ever had to coach. Not a single defenseman and your starting goaltender, none of them played for you last year. Between transfers and freshmen, you have the most unfamiliar back end. That would not usually be an easy formula for a coach to work with. So I'm going to ask you just what it's been like this first month and a half, kind of breaking in some really brand new players, but having some great success doing so.
Well, yeah, this is something that we've never really incurred, through my time here, and I don't think any head coach's time here in North Dakota. And it was something at the beginning of the year, not knowing how quick guys would adapt to our culture and our style of player and our identity, I guess. But let's start with the 8 guys and the goaltender. Outstanding people, workers. They compete ultra high compete level work ethic. I think the biggest thing was, having our strength coach have an opportunity to bring them all together on the voluntary workouts in the summer for 5 weeks. Really a time when the lights aren't bright, the lights aren't shining upon them during the campus classes schedule and during the games, where they get to come and just be around each other and have a situation where they get to learn a little bit about our culture and how we do things here. And then finally, when they do come back at the end of August, now we get to hit the ice here a little bit and teach them on how we want to play. And, I think it's a situation where we have 4 transfers on the back end, guys that are in either their 4th or 5th year of eligibility. And then we have 4 freshmen in our group that played a little longer timeline of junior hockey and had experience of playing in some junior hockey games through their 2 or 3 years of junior hockey. And each one of them kind of digging in and finding their way. And then obviously Ludwig Pearson, our goaltender, who was at University of Miami of Ohio and did an outstanding job there, finally here as a senior. And him knowing exactly what the NCHC level is each and every day on a weekend series. So, yeah, it's been kind of not knowing what we had to begin with, but kind of finding our way through the season here.
You mentioned the 4 transfers on the back end, and we talk to so many coaches throughout the year, and we hear different varying opinions on the portal. And coaches love it, coaches hate it, coaches know they have to use it. But how important was the portal for last summer, this past offseason for your team?
Well, I think you just hit it on the head, having to use it. We really had to use it, because we had some defensemen signed NHL pro contracts. We had some guys that graduated that exhausted eligibility, and we had a couple of guys that went to other programs because of thinking they could get more opportunity. And so this was the year we really needed it. But we really love to kind of recruit our own players because you build a relationship and you get to have them the course of 4 years. But in this situation of we needed 4 guys to come in to help our 4 freshmen, kind of with the experience factor. And I think as much as you want a really good player, you want an outstanding person. And, you're under the gun a little bit when somebody goes into the portal, but at the end of the day, trying to find out as much information as you can on those transfer possibilities of having great people to come in your culture. Because, you don't want to bring in somebody that's not a team first guy and a guy that's kind of all about himself. And we have 8 guys in the back end that are absolutely team first that would do anything to win for the team. And you can tell just by the shot blocking analytic as far as how many guys are willing to do that.
I kind of joked about it at the start, but there are some real star power up front for you. And I guess I'll go right to Jackson Blake. You knew what you had, I think, coming into the season after what was a fantastic freshman campaign. But what have you seen from him in terms of his growth and obviously 10 goals at this point in the season?
Yeah, I think he's taken another step. First of all, he hasn't let off the gas. He's just a hockey player that loves the game, coming to practice, coming to work out, coming to play on the weekends. But he has taken a step as far as his physical maturity and his development. He's gotten stronger. He's gotten thicker as a player. And it's one of those things where, he's taken a step leadership wise here too, coming in as a freshman and, being under the radar a little bit. Now that you're one of the better players on our team, that you gotta, you're getting paid attention to by the other team's best players and checking assignments, but it really doesn't seem to bother him. He loves the compete side of it and trying to be a factor each and every night. And I think he's done a good job so far.
Brad, you're coming to the midpoint of the season. This is kind of a two-part question. What have you really liked about your team so far, and where do you want to get better?
Yeah, great question. Like the consistency of our group here. I think we've had a tough schedule. Like, when you think about who we've played against, we've had to play the Minnesotas, the Boston Universities, Minnesota Mankato came in here, which is a tough team. Bemidji is always tough. And now we're playing Denver this weekend. We've had a gauntlet of tough opponents, and our guys have done a pretty good job of being resilient and kind of just turning the page after having a little bit of success and turning the page, knowing that it doesn't guarantee a success the next night. And I think that builds up consistency in your group. And that's what we really like the most on that side of it. We got to continue to do that. What we have to work on, I would say, is probably our power play here a little bit. I think our 5-on-5 play and our penalty kill has been very good. Our power play, which was in the top 3 or 4 in the nation last year, it's not to where we want it to be right now. But again, it's a long season and we're in a work in progress right now. And I think that's one area where I think we can get better at.
You mentioned the non-conference schedule. I think it's commendable for your team to make that trip east and for Eastern teams to come west. How important is it to you to pull together some non-conference games that are not just in the Western region?
Well, you know what? When you really think about it, right, we want to give it the true student athlete experience of playing teams from around the country. And obviously we get mired in playing teams from the West all the time, whether it's within our NCHC or the CCHA, a little bit of the Big Ten maybe. But, we really want the well-rounded experience of playing teams from out east. This year we're playing BU. They're coming back at us next year. We're going to have Clarkson on our schedule down the line. We're trying to work with BC here a little bit to get them on our schedule. And I think it's really good in the fact that these are really, really good teams. And if you do well during your regular season and non-conference schedule, you'll have a chance to make the national tournament. And there's a chance you'll end up playing some of these Eastern teams if you get into a regional or the national championship. So, yeah, getting that experience, is a big, big deal.
You bring to mind a question. It's one of the things people debate about the difference between hockey in the East and the West. And I think if you go back 20 or 25 years, you probably would see that. Is it a little bit more balanced in style? Are the teams closer to each other now in the way they play the game?
You know what I found, just playing BU is they've got a really good team. And, we haven't played BC this year, but, they're having an outstanding year as well. As I think the talent level is unbelievable as far as there's enough talent to go around to go to a lot of different teams. Normally, from year to year, there might be a few good players or elite players that'll go to some good programs. There's so many good players out there right now. And I think what you're seeing, whether it's the West or the East, you're seeing some really good programs have elite players that are making an influence on their programs. And that's great to see for college hockey.
I was going to ask you about that. Are we in, for lack of a better term, kind of a golden age for college hockey right now?
I think absolutely we are. When you look at it, from south of the border here in the U.S., I think we've done a really good job on keeping our elite players playing junior hockey and going eventually to college versus major junior. I think that the numbers have gone down, way down to going to play major junior hockey from a U.S. citizen standpoint. And, being from Canada here too, I know we have a really good chance. And, we're only 1 hour from the Canadian border of Manitoba here. We have a really good chance of getting the high-end players from Canada as well. And I know a lot of programs flourish from getting players north of the border. So I think we're at a really good time right now in college hockey where a lot of the elite players are choosing to go to college hockey, play college hockey.
More with Brad Berry in a moment. We're back with North Dakota head coach Brad Berry. Wanted to ask you one more about the NCHC. You pick up a new member next year in Arizona State. How about the addition of the Sun Devils and also the scheduling pods that may start to create a little bit tighter rivalries within the league?
Yeah, we've already got a lot of real tight rivals in the NCHC, and now to develop the pods. I think it's a good idea, when you have a 9-team league, to have the three different teams of 3 teams in each pod, 3 different pods of 3 teams in each. Yeah, you know what? In our situation, it would be, I believe it would be St. Cloud and Duluth would be in our pod. And, like I said, those are heated rivals already as far as playing against them. And now that you're playing 4 games versus maybe an unbalanced schedule of just 2, even makes it more of a rival. But I think it's a great situation to begin with, knowing there's 9 teams and everybody's going to be a part of it. And then the last part for me is bringing ASU in. I think that's a great idea. Really, really strong brand in the college market. They've done a really good job of having successful seasons playing in an independent schedule, which is always tough to do. And I think it's going to add to the brand of our already strong brand of the NCHC of bringing their program within ours.
Brad, I want to get to your 2 opponents before break, but I want to touch on one thing you mentioned about the power play. I've talked to a lot of coaches, especially out east, and it doesn't feel like power play feels the same in the approach that coaches have to take over the last few years. There's been a lot of changing. It seems like the motion away from the puck is more important than the motion with the puck and the puck motion itself. Have you seen the change in the need to change your power play structure just to kind of adapt to how systematic penalty killing became, especially in college hockey?
Yeah, you know what? I think there's a lot of soul searching to be done, on trying to get ahead of it and trying to change and be adaptive. And I think you have to, right? You have to change like anything else you do. But I do think there's the basics that you need to be very good at. We call it the habits and details. And, I think the very first thing is, on a power play, winning that initial faceoff. If you lose that draw, there's a great chance that there's going to be a clear and go down. And now you got to go, work 200 feet to get back in the zone. And I think winning the faceoff is a big deal. Playing fast, making the penalty kill move extremely quick instead of overhandling pucks, and then be more direct, like getting pucks on the net and getting that shot retrieve mentality, and finally eventually scoring a goal off of it. It could be you could call it simplify it, but at the end of the day, I think just having that attack mentality of getting back to that. But what I do think though is there's so many good coaches out there, so many good programs. And the power of video as far as having pre-scout and teaching, everything is visual now with young student athletes. And when you show somebody's power play, they get it right away as far as who they have to close in on and who they have to shut down and where they have to be. And I think the power of video has really made it tough for, power plays to keep clicking at a high rate. So that goes back into the guys that are on the 5-man unit of kind of being on the same page and having that attack mentality and simplifying what you need to do.
Still 4 games left for your team before you get to take a little break here at the holidays. Out at Denver for 2 this week. Then you get to host Colorado College for 2. I guess there are no easy weekends in the NCHC, but just, obviously what's in front of you with Denver and how they attack, because they seem to be, like your team, a pretty good offense out there.
Yeah, they've got a high-flying offense. I know they've had transition. They've got some really good returning players, and they've got some really good new players coming in, just like ourselves. And they've always had really good offensive teams. And then obviously playing well in their building. They're coming off a very successful weekend against Yale this past weekend, and it's one of those things where we want to be offensive as well, and we'll get our looks, but we got to make sure that we got to be mindful of our play away from the puck, and we got to make sure that we're very good defensively. They're a rush team. They like to create off the rush, not just 3 guys, but having a D joint on the rush for a 4-man rush. We got to make sure that we eliminate that and have good gaps, and our track coming back has to be really good and be responsible. And again, like I said, when you get into these series, it's the beauty of college hockey. 2 outstanding teams going after each other this weekend, but I think you really got to concentrate on what we have to do to have success. I think sometimes you get in a situation where you look at the other team and you try to offset different things on how they play, and we got to be mindful of that. We got to remember how we play and what our identity is to have success as well. And I think that's given us success early this season of concentrating on how we need to play.
Well, you just said it. Your team has had some early season success. Number 2 in the country right now. North Dakota has been a fantastic start. I think as even outside college hockey fans, we love seeing North Dakota back toward the top because it means a ton of passionate fans that are right in the game with us. We need the North Dakota faithful loving this game. But Brad, we appreciate your time. Best of luck the rest of the way. Obviously, safe travels and good luck this weekend.
Yeah, thanks, fellas. You guys do an outstanding job, and thanks for having me on today.
That's North Dakota head coach Brad Berry. Jim, we always love talking to Brad, and I was really intrigued with him talking about the transfer portal, especially about having the need to use it.
Well, I think that is one of the most important things that coaches have to recognize. You don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to like anything in college hockey, but you have to know what you have to use. The transfer portal is one thing that you have to employ, and you have to use it in the right way. And when you look at this team, I kind of joked off the top about the fact that, he didn't know what anybody behind his offense would look like this year. All of his defensemen, his goaltender, his starting goaltender, all either freshmen or transfers. And I think that, when you think about that type of a makeup of a team, it's so difficult. But you also think about the fact that 4 of those defensemen are either seniors or grad students. They're older, they're experienced, they've been through so much in this game. And they are able to help lead. And you go to a goaltender that's in the same situation in Pearson. And these players are able to lead younger players through the process, get them acclimated a little bit more. I think that is something that it's almost difficult to realize how important that is. And listen, North Dakota has not been at the top for a while, and they needed to find a way to get back to the top. They knew they were going to be thin. Why bring in an entire young 18, 19-year-old back end? Bring in some experience, and they've done that well, and it's worked out really, really well. And I like what Brad said about the fact that there was buy-in right from the beginning, voluntary workouts during the summer, guys showing up and going through that 5-week program. And I think that shows how much buy-in you have, and it shows that you picked the right guys in the portal. And that's part of the portal that is the most difficulty to adapt to is bringing the right players into your program.
He mentioned about some players spending an extra year in juniors, and certainly the extra year of eligibility through COVID and the transfer portal has contributed to that. But it was also interesting to hear him talk about really the caliber of player. And we've talked about that a lot on our podcast this year and last year about how there are so many good players out there that it has made every team out there, for the most part, better. We really do have a great product, if I can use the word product. And I suppose in the name, image, and likeness era, there is about that. It's about entertainment. We've had coaches talk about that. But the college game right now could not be more exciting than it is.
No, you could take probably a half dozen teams from Division III, put them into NCAA Division I hockey, and they'd be competitive and they'd be enjoyable to watch. That's how strong the talent base is. I think you honestly could add 10 more Division I programs, and you would not be lacking the appropriate talent to play this game. I think recruiting is more difficult than ever because you do have to make sure that you're getting the best of the best. I do think that the day of the 18-year-old freshman, which still there's plenty of them out there. I look at Boston College and Boston University as some of the younger teams that have a lot of these young 18-year-old hotshots. Fantastic to watch when they play well. Boy, do they play well. But it's also advantageous as a coach to have some 23 and 24 and maybe even 25-year-olds on your team, the bigger, stronger players. When you get down to a postseason and you can put your 25-year-old out against an 18-year-old, there is a distinct difference. And I think that can't be overlooked. I think what Brad was trying to say is that those extra years that you spend, maybe not on a college campus, but spending it in a junior team, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in the United States, it works. And I think we've seen more coaches begin to really take that approach. Because for a long time, that was the approach taken by the less traditional powerhouses. Union winning a national championship with that, Yale kind of going through that. Some other teams getting to Frozen Fours with older teams. The non-traditional powerhouses getting there usually were through the less traditional route. Now you're seeing that less traditional route of taking the older players become the more traditional route.
Yeah, and we haven't heard talk about an age limit in a while. Last thing, I loved hearing Brad talk about working on the power play, the importance of winning that offensive zone face-off, and about habits and details and getting to the net and having that attack mentality. I mean, that's part of what is making the current game so good. Teams are attacking the net in a level of ferocity I haven't seen in a while.
No, I had a friend in Hockey East tell me about 5 years ago that face-off data was useless, that it didn't matter if you won or lost a face-off. Tell that to Brad Berry right now. If you're struggling on the power play, you're losing that first face-off, there's 20, 30 seconds that's gone. And you need to find a way to make that up. But then, I love what he said about the rest of the approach. It's not traditional. Like if you sit there and there's so much video out there and players are so coachable when it comes to video, you have to have a little bit of creativity. And it usually is movement away from the puck. It's usually finding seams that aren't typically the normal passes that you would see that, I think teams understand puck retrieval on a power play as important as puck movement. So you get that shot off, you find a way to get that rebound. That's what makes successful power plays. And I know that, Brad's power play is one that's in the works right now. It's not successful. It will get there. They have too much talent not to get there. But it's employing the right things, and it's teaching. It's using that video to teach. And finding ways to be a little bit creative.
Well, it's too early to say it's a lock, but I expect to see the Fighting Hawks right in the mix of the NCAAs come March. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Spotlight.